Welcome to the Starzology Astrology podcast. I am your host, Alison Price. And in this episode, I'm going to talk to you about 3 tips to combat interpretation overwhelm. So this is for aspiring astrologers when you start to do chart readings. And when you're just starting out and learning how to read a chart, it can feel like there's a lot to take in. So whether you're a hobbyist, amateur, or student astrologer, it's helpful to start by focusing on essentials. You don't have to tackle everything at once. Instead, you can gradually explore the finer details of chart readings over time. So I think that the key is to prioritize understanding the main elements in the chart first. And people tell me all the time that they wonder where to begin with the reading because there's just so much in the chart, they don't know where to start. So the point being that you don't need to do everything at once if you are a beginner or even a student astrologer. You can filter out some of the information, but keep the core essential information within the chart. So to help you ease the overwhelm of starting out as an astrologer, here are 3 strategies you can use when you approach a chart for the first time. So my first tip is the interpretation overwhelm, and I'm talking now about visible planets. So one way of reducing the quantity of information in a chart is to only consider the visible planets. So that is the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So you cut out Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, Chiron, Eris, and really I would go with the points as well. I would cut out the nodes, I would cut out anything else that's extraneous, and only concentrate on the 7 visible planets to start with. So if you or undisplay them from your app, you will actually just see those 7 planets, and that's what we're looking for. My second tip to reduce overwhelm with chart readings is to only consider the Ptolemaic aspects. So these are the big 5 aspects. They're the classical aspects. They're called the Ptolemaic aspects. So these 5 aspects that you will include are the conjunction, the opposition, the trine, the square, and the sextile. So these are aspects that you need to keep in, and the aspects that you're going to take out or ignore, or they are best to take out, are the minor aspects. So this would be the semisextile, quincunx, semisquare, and sesquiquadrat. And also at this point, you really need to ignore any of the other aspects of the 5 or 7 or 9 series, quintiles, septiles, noviles, and so on. You don't want those in. They are the lesser used aspects. You don't want those in either. Now, my third tip to overcome interpretation overwhelm is to tighten your orbs. So I recommend that you actually cut the orbs in half. So when we would generally have an 8-degree orb for a conjunction, I now recommend you cut it down to 4 degrees. Where we'd have an 8-degree orb for an opposition, a trine, and a square that would have been 8, I'd say make it 4. And then for your sextile, where the orb is 4, reduce it down to 2 degrees. Now, what this will do is it will get rid of wider orbed aspects, such as 6, 7, and 8 degrees, and it will show you the more dynamic, the closer, the tighter aspects, which are more important anyway. So the idea here is that we are actually reducing the connections between the planets. So you will still have aspects left, but you're not necessarily going to have so many aspects. And I'm going to talk about this in a moment. Now, I know this is a lot of talking, but we've got 3 main points here, and I'm going to use them as on an example chart. And the chart I have is for the artist Andy Warhol. So let me just give you his date of birth. So it's 6:30 a.m., August the 6th, 1928, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. So this chart returns an ascendant of 14 degrees Leo. And I have displayed this chart on the blog post. There is a link below this podcast. You can go straight through to the blog post and see this actual chart and see what I'm talking about, so you can follow along. So the first chart I'm showing has got everything in that I would normally use. So we've got all the planets, all the outers, we've got the nodes, we've got the part of fortune and the vertex and so on. And below that, I have displayed the aspectarian. And what that means is this is showing all the aspects that you would have between all of these planets. So typically you would have 12 planets and 4 points, but now we're cutting it down to actually just 7 planets. And with our full chart, you've got 55 aspects to interpret, and it's overwhelming. There is no question about it. So simply by reducing it down to the 7 visible planets, the whole chart is a lot easier. So this is the next chart I'm displaying, where we've only got the 7 planets in it, and there are still, of course, some aspects. So it actually shows up now that there are only actually 7 aspects. You've got 3 squares, 3 trines, and a semi-square. These are the 7 aspects being displayed, and you can see them on the grid below as well. Finally, if we reduce it down further to only Ptolemaic aspects, the 5 Ptolemaic aspects, it actually then takes out the semi-square and it leaves you with 3 squares and 3 trines. And I've shown that there on the third chart example in the blog post. And we can see quite clearly there's only 6 aspects there, the 3 squares and the 3 trines. So this is where you're going to start. The next thing we're going to do is cut the orbs in half. So of our 6 aspects that we have, by cutting the orbs of the aspects in half, we get rid of all the squares, and what remains are the 3 trines. Now, these 3 trines actually make up a grand trine. This is totally underscoring the fact that this grand trine of these 3 planets, the Sun, the Moon, and Saturn, is the main story in this chart. So I've shown also there the actual chart with the grand trine in it. Those are our remaining 3 aspects. This is where you would start interpreting, and the aspectarian shows it's there. So we've got the Sun trine the Moon, we've got the Moon trine Saturn, and we've got the Sun trine Saturn. These are the 3 aspects that you would actually focus on in this chart reading. So by implementing these 3 steps to reduce the amount of data for interpretation, the information is significantly pared down, because you remember we started off at 55 aspects and we've ended up with 3. So the point is, it's not necessary to take all 3 steps. You could decide to take one of the steps, not all 3 of them, and you would reduce the quantity of information that you need to interpret. The point is that if you're feeling overwhelmed by there's so much stuff, I don't know where to start, it's best to remove things from the actual chart display that are, I don't want to say weaker, but more extraneous, and focus in on the core things in the chart, which are the visible planets, Ptolemaic aspects with tight aspects. And this will reduce your chart interpretation down. And not only that, it will show that what is left is critically important to be interpreted first anyway. So let's just approach this from a different angle. When you introduced new elements into a chart, when you're adding things in, such as a whole fleet of asteroids, fixed stars, or whatever, you inevitably increase the interpretation load. Each new component requires consideration, of course, by sign, house, and aspect, and it adds more work to your process. Moreover, if you decide to include quintile aspects, and which I love, but while intriguing, it further burdens your interpretation load, since these aspects also need to be analysed. So really the key takeaway here is that the more you add to a chart, the more it contributes to your interpretation workload. And conversely, by simplifying what is displayed within the chart, brings clarity to what truly matters as you focus on the tight Ptolemaic aspects between the visible planets. So let me know which of these tips you will try to reduce your chart information load and improve your chart readings. If you've found value in this episode, please do consider sharing it with someone who would be interested. You can email us at starzology@gmail.com and visit our website at starzology.com. I'm Alison Price. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next time. Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the 2 main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer, or someone who's learning astrology, or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.